when the world is in crisis. And people are looking for hope and answers. Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world. Swadika, very good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World Tonight. I'm Nan Bunag.
I'm Thulipnak Somphoplao. And today we have the protest that ongoing at Kieka intersection on the way to the Parliament House because today there is a parliamentary session discussing the Constitution Amendment. And the protesters just try to get there to just gather in front of the Parliament House, but they have been declared that 50-meter radius around the Parliament House is a restricted area. So the police is trying everywhere possible to stop the protesters.
And right now we have our reporter at the scene, Kun Kitipat Sukjit, who has the latest on the situation. So Kun Kitipat, can you give us an overview of what is actually going on right now?
Good evening, Kun Philip and Kun Nat. Right now, a lot of injury people caused by the high-pressure water truck from the police and also the tear gas from police. As we know that the protesters is going to march on the Sunset Road to in front of the House of Government for the, as you know, as the parliamentarians debated the bills seeking for the amendment the Constitution. So that's why the protesters is here today. And as we can see that the ambulances come in and out frequently because there are a lot of injured people right now, both from the high-pressure water spray truck and also the tear gas.
Are there any more clashes so far?
Yes, there's still some spraying water to the protesters, and right now the front line of the protester going backward and more backward right now. But at the front line right now, they're still spraying with the water by police.
Just a little earlier, there was a scuffle between the royalists and the anti-establishment protesters. Is there still royalists around the area?
I'm in a different area. I'm on the Sunset Road, opposite of the Kieka intersection.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not in the same area with the royalists?
Oh, not the same.
Okay.
The royalist protest, royalist gathering is in the other side at the Kieka intersection. But right now I'm on the Sunset Road side.
Okay. So
how close are they towards the parliament?
Not too far, not more than a kilometers, around like 300 to 500 meters from front line to in front of the parliament. And also the tear gas has more severe in each time, like first time, the second time, and the third time. The tear gas has more severe effect to me, as I can feel by my own feeling.
So we saw the social media of the United Front for Thammasat and demonstration and also Free Youth calling more people to come out to the demonstration. Do you still see people arriving at the protest site?
Yeah. While some people move backward and go back to their home, a lot of protesters still come inside the protest to join the demonstration, which is possibly the prolonged protest tonight, because the vote of the parliament meeting will be done by tomorrow. So it's possible that the protest today will be the prolonged one.
Is there a possibility that they might stay overnight?
Yes, I can say that.
There was
the battle.
Yes.
Yeah, because the battle right now is still ongoing, and there's nothing for me to see that will stop in the near future.
Were you able to pass through in front of the Parliament House? Was there anyone there, any preparation, something that different from usual?
Again, this right?
In front of the Parliament House, were you able to pass through in front of the Parliament House?
Oh,
Did
no.
they let the reporter in?
No, because the street in front of the Parliament from both sides has been blocked by police already. So the protest right now divided into groups. First group is at me on Samsen Road, and another group is at the Kiat Kai intersection.
What about other reporters who were covering the protest today? How did they manage to keep themselves safe when there's tear gas and water cannons used all the time?
Okay, the protesters asked for the donating of the money to buy the salt water and also the pure water to heal the people who face the tear gas, like me. Okay, firstly, when I face the tear gas, I go to the people who have the pure water and ask them for it and wash my face. And if it's not better, use the salt water to wash your face. But do not do like this, because the chemical will spread all around your face. You have to make it through your face like this, make it through only
To
one
wash
way,
it off,
and the
right.
chemical will go out.
Are the police still using water truck right now, or just the confrontation between police and the protesters?
Right now, I've asked some of the protesters, and the information is quite different. So I don't know if it's okay for me to talk about it, but I will talk every information I have right now. So firstly, some of the protesters said that the police mixed the tear gas into the waters to spray to the protesters. But some of them said that it's just only the water.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but we got the report from the police that it's chemical laced water. It has some irritant substances. That's why you feel irritated when it gets on your face.
Yeah. But,
Okay.
they have the real tear gas already.
So how are you feeling? Are you recovering right now after experiencing with all the chemical irritants?
Right now I'm a bit better as I use the method of the basic healing by using salt water to clean my eyes and also around my face. Even I wearing the security glasses, I still feel a lot severe.
Right.
The symptom is quite severe for me.
So just to be clear, there are two groups of protesters on two sides of Kiat Kai intersection, right? Okay, and both sides still cannot go through Kiat Kai intersection yet.
No.
Because we saw in the news earlier that a group of protesters able to disassemble some part of the barricade and walk through. So where is that exactly? Do you know?
Maybe. I am only in the one side of the protest, but this side we cannot walk through the barrier because the high pressure water truck and also the barrier and also the obstacle is all around, so no one can pass it for sure. But in the other side, it may be possible.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Kun Kitipat. Please stay safe and stay away from chemical-laced water.
Thank you so much, Kun Silvit.
Thank you. Stay safe. And that is the latest from Kun Kitipat Chinsukjit, who is actually on site to cover the ongoing protest. But a few hours ago, there were also scuffles between the two opposing groups of protesters at Kiat Kai intersection, while the anti-government protesters were trying to move closer to the parliament. And as the parliamentarians debated the bill seeking to amend the constitution, police battled with the anti-government protesters trying to break through the barriers outside the parliament at Kiat Kai intersection throughout the afternoon. And at one point, scuffles also broke out between pro-democracy protesters and royalists dressed in yellow. Based on the reports, at least 9 people have been injured after police used high-pressure water cannons against thousands of protesters who attempted to approach the parliament complex. And this is live pictures from the scene right now. And as you can see that there are ambulances trying to go through and help those who've been injured from these scuffles. And recently, Deputy Police Spokesman, Police Colonel Krisana Pathanajaran said police decided to use water cannons against the protesters after they ignored their warning to step back. He said police had drawn a 50-meter radius around the parliament, which protesters were not allowed to encroach. The police spokesman said police initially used plain water against the protesters, but later resorted to water laced with components of tear gas against them. Earlier in the day, members of the royalist group known as Thai Pakdi rallied at the parliament this morning around 9 a.m. to submit a petition against the bills seeking to amend the constitution. Many of them stayed over and clashed briefly with the anti-government protesters who were there to pressure the parliamentarians to pass the bills. But at one point later, protesters on both sides were seen embracing each other under a hail of projectiles before agreeing to a truce. As the standoff between the police and protesters continued, parliamentarians shifted their debate on the bills to the situation outside. Some opposition MPs pleaded with House Speaker Chua Lik Pai to convince the police to refrain from using violence against the protesters. As the debate dragged on, a number of MPs and senators, as well as parliament officials, were seen leaving the compound for safety reasons. At press time, the protesters were still confronting the anti-riot police manning what was reported to be the last barrier between the demonstrators and the parliament complex. The parliamentary debate is scheduled to continue through the night, and the vote on the bills will take place tomorrow. And in case you missed it, there was one point where the royalists and the anti-government protesters were clashing with each other, breaking through the barriers and throwing projectiles at each other. If we could take you through that moment again, that was the most tense moment during the afternoon already, because we didn't expect the royalists and the anti-government protesters to confront with each other so aggressively.
Yeah, because the royalists, they told the media that they don't want any clashes and they intend to disperse before the anti-establishment protesters arrive, but somehow some of them still there, so they kind of pass through each other, not pass through, but get too close to each other. Right now, we got a report from Thai PBS reporter that some of the protesters from Kiatkai intersection already only 150 meters away from the parliament compound. So right now, there are three parts of the protesters. Two parts is at the Kiatkai intersection, one of them closer to the parliament, and the other one is at the Kiatkai pier. And what you see now is the live images, live coverage from what's going on over there at Kiatkai intersection.
And as you can see, there are tons of policemen gathered around the area to prevent the protesters from reaching to the parliament. And as previously reported just now, the protesters are actually 150 meters away from the parliament. And what you're seeing right now, these are live pictures from the area. And as you can see, the police are actually gathered together to prevent the protesters from reaching the parliament.
So just a little earlier, some lawmakers and parliament officials started leaving the parliament compound by boat. The boats, there were about 20 of them, prepared by the harbor department after the police used water cannon to spray water at protesters because they just want to try to get into the restricted zone. Cao Kai, member of parliament, Rangsiman Rom, left the parliament chamber to observe the situation outside the parliament. If you have been following the situation, you will see that he has been coming out and negotiate with the police for the protesters and observe the situation. He said that the water cannon spray plain water at the protesters 3 times were as warning before. The 4th time when the water mixed with tear gas was used, as he insisted that the police said that police strictly comply with the legal procedure in the crowd control. But today in the parliament, around 3:30 p.m., Mr. Pornpet Vichit Cholachai, the Deputy Parliament President, sought approval from the floor for the constitutional amendment draft proposed by ILAW to be presented in the Parliament, and the approval was granted. So the constitutional draft by ILAW, the one that has been widely opposed by many senators and also by the royalists, actually was discussed in the Parliament today.
Right.
So representing ILAW, Mr. John Eungpakon said that ILAW proposed the charter amendment draft, which was signed by more than 98,000 people who have wanted to see Thailand become, this is in his word, a truly democratic country, because they feel that the current constitution, which states that the sovereign power belongs to the people, is, quote unquote, a lie. The constitution states that the people have the right to elect the senators, but they have no opportunity to dictate who will form the government and who will become the prime minister, said John Eungpakon. And he said that ILAW proposed the People's Charter draft to, he used the word, detoxicate the dictatorial system before there is a constitution drafting assembly to craft a new charter. So that's the explanation and argument from ILAW, the NGO. It's actually a Thai NGO, but it was in the news that it has been receiving funding from various foreign organizations, and that is the point that some of the royalists use against them, as that maybe they have hidden agenda and because they are backed by foreign government.
And to sum up the parliamentary session, they're actually discussing the charter amendments with 7 bills in discussion, and most of them seek changes in the charter. And for tomorrow, they will be voting whether the charter amendments should proceed. So we'll have to see what happens tomorrow. We will have to see what happens tomorrow and what will happen with the ongoing protests.
So the draft by ILAW, it is pushing for 5 changes and 5 revocations in current charter, which has been enforced since April 2017. If this draft got endorsed by the parliament, it would lead to at least 4 changes. First one is the Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha, who led the 2014 coup as then Army Chief, would have to step down since he would become unqualified. The second, the junta-appointed Senate would be vacated and replaced by an elected one. Third, a process would begin for the selection of new constitutional court judges and new members of independent organizations, using provisions under the 1997 Constitution. And the fourth, a new constitution would be drafted by an elected constitution drafting assembly. So you hear a lot of the word elected. I think it's part of the thing that ILAW try to focus, which in order to make everything democratic, ILAWs believe that people that involved in policy making and lawmakers should all be elected.
And we gotta say, after listening to these changes, it might sort of match with the demands by the anti-government protesters whose demands are the Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha to resign and the charter amendments as well as the reform of the monarchy. But based on what ILAW has proposed and leading to at least 4 changes, we can see that the first one, the Prime Minister who led the 2014 coup will have to step down is more of a result of the charter amendments here.
Right. So right now is what happened when ILAW was trying to get signature from the draft supporter when they were able to gather altogether almost 100,000 signatures. But now what you see is a live coverage of the protest that has been ongoing since the afternoon.
And it seems like the protesters are still trying to reach the parliament. We're not sure how close they are, but previously it's about 150 meters close to the parliament, but we're not sure how close they are right now.
There are actually three parts of them. Two of the groups are at Gekai intersection and one is closer than the other to the parliament compound and another one is at Gekai pier. Reportedly, earlier, some of the protesters actually jumped into the water.
Right.
And when we talk about this protest, the Constitution Amendment is one of the demands. The reform of the monarchy is one of the demands, the resignation of the Prime Minister. But one of the earlier demands by the young protesters is the education reform.
Yes.
And here we have a special report on the education reform, why it is requested by these young protesters.
คือแบบรู้สึกว่ามันคือการศึกษาเลยอ่ะมันคือหนูคิดไว้แค่ว่าถ้าการศึกษามันดีอ่ะเดี๋ยวหลายๆอย่างมันจะตามมาเองอินฟราสตรัคเจอร์มันดีหลายๆอย่างมันจะตามมาเองอ่ะ
If the education system were good, other things would follow, said Isada Kun San Tao, one of the core leaders of the Bad Student Movement. A network of high school students started their movement in May last year under the name Bad Student. They have been protesting in front of the Education Ministry, making symbolic gestures in their schools and joining the anti-establishment protests. Their main goal is education reform, but they are also discussing the draconian regulations on uniforms, which include hairstyle rules and even the kind of school bag students may use. In some conservative schools, the rules go down in detail of the length of the skirt in centimeters, the length of their hair from the root to end, the color and the width of hair ribbon, the kind of socks and shoes, among other things. The students see these regulations as irrelevant to improving their education. It frustrates them. After making noises for months, the Education Ministry announced that schools must relax their uniform rules. But many schools, however, have still not changed. Now the students are calling for the Education Minister to resign. Nathapol Tipsuwan became the Education Minister in July 2019. He is one of a few in the past decade who have remained in this post longer than an average, which is less than a year. He said that the government already had a reform plan in place and endorsed by the Prime Minister.
We have had the plan for reform in place, and the Prime Minister has come and endorsed the platform. Okay. We plan to reorganize the curriculum, and we have plans to re-educate the teachers in order for them to be able to improve their skills.
Thailand allocates a very large budget to the Education Ministry. Every government talks about the need for the systemic reform, but it has not happened. Some academics say that because education reform is very complex and it takes a long time to see the results. Thailand has had almost 20 education ministers in the past 20 years. From a politician's point of view, education reform is not worth the energy if they think about it in electoral terms. Nathapol admits that the lack of continuity from policy to policy is part of the problem. He is trying to lay down a foundation for the next minister.
if education has no quality, people will have no quality.
This statement is not just an opinion. In some people's minds, it is a fact. While Thailand has been struggling to grow from a developing country for decades, one important element has often been overlooked: an education system to benefit the country. กิรติกร นาคสมภพเปล่า reporting for Thai PBS World.
It seems like it's going to be a long way to go for education reform because we're still seeing a lot of problems that are going on with the educational system, not just only what the bad students were saying, but the gap between schools in developed cities and schools in rural areas as well.
We're talking about equality between schools all over the country, among the schools, and we are talking about accessibility to good education, just the standard of overall. I think first thing we need to do is just at least raise the standard of the one that not really up to par first before we do anything else.
Definitely. And just so you know, these are the stories we've also been following today. Thailand found 3 new cases of COVID-19 today. 2 of them returned from the United Kingdom and already entered state quarantine, while the other returned from the Philippines. The new cases brought the total number of infections to 3,878, with 3 new recoveries and no new fatalities. The Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration has decided to extend the state of emergency for another 45 days from December 1st until January 15th in order to cover the New Year festival when many people will return to their hometowns or travel during the long vacation. General Nathapol Nakpanit, as the head of the CCSA sub-panel, said yesterday that the extension is necessary to prevent the possible spread of the virus. However, he said that the extension was not politically motivated. The Tourism Authority of Thailand expects around 3 million people will travel domestically during the long weekend from November 19th to the 22nd. The TAT Governor Yuttasak Supasorn said the cool weather at this time of the year would be a positive factor in motivating people to travel. However, the news of COVID-19 infections in the country could also be a negative influence. It is expected that travelers during the long holidays will generate more than 12.6 billion baht into the system, while room occupancy would average 37%. And we'll take you to
The
live
coverage.
pictures,
Yeah.
live pictures of the anti-government protesters at the Gyekai intersection once again as they're moving closer to the parliament.
And I think the police still trying to slow them down because they already declared the 50 meters radius around the parliament compound a restricted area. So
And-
by law, they have authority to do so.
And as you can see, there are 2 completely different scenes. On one side, the police were trying to patrol the area around the parliament, while the anti-government protesters are trying to move to the parliament with some sort of large balloons with them as well.
We just saw a balloon like 15, 20 minutes ago.
Yes.
These balloons were not here earlier, but in the afternoon what we saw was something resembling rubber duck. Lots of them.
The rubber ducks were quite symbolic for today's protest, but for this time round, not just the rubber ducks, but also the balloons. The colorful balloons are actually coming along with the anti-government protesters.
We saw a little scuffle at the corner of the live coverage. We're not sure what's going on there, but it looks a little out of ordinary.
So I guess there's a scuffle between the police and the anti-government protesters who are flashing their 3-finger salute as they try to converge to the parliament.
And you can hear that the protest leader trying to tell everybody to calm down. I think this is one of the things that academic foreign analysts has talked about the protest this time in Thailand, that both sides look like they're trying their best to restrain, to minimize the clash, to try to avoid it. And like we can see that the leader always tell the protester to just calm down and just not create any commotion.
And it looks like the protesters are almost there.
And we see lots of police officers just walk back from where they were. So the protesters getting closer and closer to the parliament. So we got a report that they're coming very close to the parliament gate already.
Very close, actually. And as you can see, the anti-government protesters are flashing their three-finger salute as they converge to the parliament.
I think you see before that this angle, just like a couple minutes ago, there were only police officers and reporters, journalists with camera and such. But right now we see everyone, protesters, police officers, journalists, you see them with the cameras, seems to be all mixed in front of the parliament compound. At the officers actually opened the way for the protesters to walk there in front of the parliament compound.
As for the latest on the number of injuries, according to Erwan Medical Center, there have been 18 injuries already. 12 of them have been injured from the tear gas, and another 6 have not been confirmed how they got injured, but so far there are 18 injuries already from the protest today.
Probably the police will try their best if the protesters try to get in, but the protesters said it themselves they didn't want to get in, they just want to hang out in front of the parliament compound. They even talk about barbecue pork dinner, which I don't think anybody talk about it now.
It is nowhere to be seen with the หมูกระทะ or barbecue.
But it was a theme. It was
yes,
a theme.
it was the theme for. As they announced yesterday, there were 2 themes. The first theme was the barbecue dinner, and the second theme is the inflatable rubber ducks.
And there's the speaker truck of the protest leader moving slowly into the area in front of the parliament compound. What you see right now is the live coverage from the protest, which moved from Gekai intersection already to in front of the Parliament House. Earlier today, now they do the 3-finger salute, which is their symbolic gesture of the 3 demands of their protest. Earlier today, there was a Parliament session discussing the constitution draft. And one of them was drafted by ILAW, which is the one that got supported by a lot of anti-establishment protesters. They got about 100,000 signatures for it, backing it up. So it's the first one that didn't get drafted by lawmaker and be able to table in the parliament.
And as you can see right now, the protest leaders are on this truck trying to converge. And anti-government protesters are flashing their 3-finger salute as they converge to the parliament.
And inside the parliament, there is still a discussion, there's still a conference, there's still a session inside.
And what you're seeing right now, these are live pictures from the area close to the parliament. And as you can see, there is the anti-government protesters as well as the riot police.
Gotta say though, all these balloons make the mood a little less
Lighter.
Yeah, a little lighter.
A little bit lighter, but we're not quite sure what's the significance of the balloons. So everyone is hoping that there will be no more scuffles or any sort of tense confrontation that we've been seeing throughout the afternoon. It looks peaceful so far based
Yes.
on what is going on right now.
I think if they're not trying to get into the parliament compound, things should be okay at the moment. Hopefully no more scuffle, no more clashes, and we don't see the water truck right now, at least in the perimeter of this camera.
And this is live pictures, and this is actually happening right now.
Okay, seems like they're trying to move the protest leader speaker truck closer to the police line. And we got a camera right in front of us.
We gotta say that many of the reporters are covering the ongoing protests, and this is something that has captured the international media's attention for the past couple of weeks, especially with some of the events that really caught the attention from viewers around the world. And all the eyes are not just on the protest, but it's what the protesters are actually demanding. The three key demands, which is for the Prime Minister to resign, the Charter amendments, as well as the reform of the monarchy. But the second one is now going on during the parliamentary session. And if that succeeds, the protesters have only two demands left.
Now we see the police officials sitting down, and we got the report that the protesters also are settling down as well in front of the parliament compound. Today they set up the demonstration because they said they want to keep their eyes on the parliament session. They want to know whether the draft by I-law, which got about 100,000 signatures, back it up, get to be discussed in the parliament session. And as you know earlier, it was presented by John Eungpakorn, so it has been discussed in the parliament already. Tomorrow, as scheduled in the afternoon, it should all finish about 2-3 p.m. and should be vote by the end of the day. So by the end of tomorrow, we would know what will happen with all the 7 constitution drafts that has been discussed in the parliament sessions.
It looks like the protesters and the police are having some sort of peaceful negotiation. Not really.
Right now, it seems like they're trying to settle down, because you can see before, if you have been watching, the police on the other side, lots of them already sitting down, so they got an order to stand down already. We got the report that Mike Panupong Jatnok, one of the protest leaders, has been negotiating with the officials to open the way for them. And That's why they able to come this close to the parliament compound.
And it looks like they are passing on the balloons to the police.
And inside the parliament, they're still talking, discussing the constitutional amendment.
So two separate scenes. On one side where the anti-government protesters with the balloons are confronting with the police, and the parliamentary session on the charter amendments going on. And the parliamentary session will continue tomorrow as well. And later on in the day, tomorrow, they will also vote on whether the charter amendments should proceed.
So the opposition party said that, especially Gaoklai party said that they will pass all 7 drafts, especially the one by eye law, while a lot of senators has been opposing the one by eye law specifically because part of it is to get rid of the influence that senators will have over the vote for the prime minister. So a lot of people think that it will create instability for the country. And one of the things that will get affected by the draft by eye law is that the 20 years plan that the junta has been designed will have to be squashed as well. A lot of things will be squashed if the constitution draft by eye law passed. Also, the prime minister will be unqualified by that too.
And what you're seeing on the left, this is the live pictures from the parliament compound.
And the right one is a live what's going on in the parliament. They are discussing the constitution draft. Seems like everything is stable now.
Yep.
Okay, so that is what has been going on at the Parliament House from Kiatgai intersection to in front of the Parliament compound and inside the Parliament compound. Tomorrow there will be more happening. Tomorrow they will try to finish the session by 2 p.m. and they will try to have the vote to pass or not pass the constitution draft by 6 p.m. So we probably will see more action tomorrow evening.
Definitely. And by the meantime, you can keep yourself updated with the latest news with Thai PBS World, whether it's on a website or Facebook or Twitter. And we will keep you posted on the latest developments on the ongoing protests as well as the parliamentary session on all of our platforms. And that wraps up tonight's edition of Thai PBS World Tonight. Thank you very much for watching and we'll see you tomorrow. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ